All right, what's up, everybody? Episode 4 with Hoops with Noel. We have midseason awards, so MVP, Most Improved, Defense Player of the Year. We're going to nominate some guys, discuss why or why not they should be, what more they need to do to get it. But first, we have a pretty hot NFL topic, kind of out of nowhere too, which is always good. And Nolan's a Chicago Bears fan, so this is pretty big news for him. So the whole Russell Wilson thing has been crazy. So here's some of the details on that. So basically, Russell Wilson, this offseason, he's been having some trouble with the organization. They fired their old offensive coordinator. They got a new one. He didn't get to give his input. They didn't take it, and that got him mad. There was other things with him not being happy with them not investing in their offensive line. He's taken a lot of hits over the years. And then more recently, they were asking for his input. They didn't take it at all. He stormed out in rage. And this is just a report. And then his agent comes out and said, Russell Wilson doesn't want to trade. But if he were to get traded, he would be okay with the Bears, the Saints, the Cowboys, and I believe the Raiders. There was that fourth team. I think the Raiders were interested. We know John Gruden loves him. John Gruden loves Russell Wilson. So there's some of the info there. First, Nolan, what are your thoughts on this? It kind of came out of nowhere. What are your thoughts?
Definitely. Came out of nowhere. Was not expecting it at all. Look, I mean, as a Chicago Bears fan, it's always an up and down with the quarterback position.
Yeah.
Not really having anything stable. So I want to believe this so much that we can get Russ, and I really hope it does happen. But part of me is just how much can I commit to this, because there is all this
emotional attachment.
Yeah, I don't want to get too attached before it happens, because it's getting my hopes up. Because as you know, if Russell Wilson comes to Chicago Bears, he's the best quarterback in franchise history on day one. Does he have to take the field?
Yeah.
So
he doesn't have to play a game, just the name.
So what I'm going to say is, I believe this is Instagram handle is Dangerous Russ. Am I correct on that?
Dangerous, yeah.
This is just dangerous to me as a Chicago Bears fan, because I don't want to get too attached, but at the same time I do. A very fun topic to scheme about, though. Thinking it happen and whatnot. But yeah, totally caught me by surprise, and I'm still surprised that it's still going on. It's still possibilities are out there.
Yeah,
but yeah,
definitely. And here's something too is the fact that his agent said Russell Wilson doesn't want to get traded, but if he were to get traded, here's the teams. He's basically saying it's like, if you have a girlfriend and you're saying, yeah, I don't want to split up, but if I were, like, these are the other people that I would be like. He's thought about it. He's thought about where he wants to go. We know his wife is very big in the, I believe, music. And she would like the bigger city. And that's something that has a factor. He's come out and said he loves the city of Chicago. He could see himself there. And the Bears need a quarterback. This is just crazy. And the thing is, too, those other destinations don't make any sense. The Saints are like 60, 70, 80 million over the cap, and they'll get under because Mickey Loomis somehow always finds a way. The Cowboys, that's interesting too. I don't feel like he really fits their timeline of being like a win now team. If he went there, their O-line's kind of in shambles. Their defense is horrible. I mean, their offense would be exciting, but that just doesn't make sense. And what are they going to do with Dak too? And then the Raiders, John Gruden loves them, but they still have Derek Carr, who played well last year. So the Bears, I think, really do make the most sense. For a trade, what do you think they would have to give up in order to get him? Because this is another huge part of, like, if how much they're actually asking for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there would definitely have to be some big players given up and some draft. Yeah. I would assume so. Probably a first rounder, maybe even two.
At least.
Yeah, in terms of the players, most likely they're going to take our defense, because it is too much to offer on the offensive side.
Exactly.
So when I look at who could maybe be traded, maybe a Kyle Fuller.
That would be interesting. They lose Shaquem Griffin this offseason. Mm-hmm. And then another name who I think we can exclude from the talks would be Roquan Smith. unless they want to move off of Bobby Wagner, which is just so unlikely, or they want to switch and have both of them in there, which that'd be unbelievable. But yeah, I think we can remove him too from the list.
Mm-hmm. I think though, I think right what you're saying is there is a possibility. I mean, as much as I don't get too attached to it, he came out with this list of teams. The Bears make the most sense in that regard, so it is possible. And I think as a Bears fan, he was saying he has like some squabbles with the Seattle organization.
Mm-hmm.
All Bears fans and just the entire city would take him with open arms.
Oh, they would love it.
If there's a possibility, they'll trade anyone. I think anyone on the Bears roster.
Yeah, nobody's off the table.
And rightfully so. If Russell Wilson comes to this team, we're a playoff contention team. We're a contender, and that would just be such an awesome thing. But again, as much as I want to keep talking about it, it's tough. It's tough. So I'm hopeful something can happen, but at the same time, I just don't know if Ryan Pace is going to get over drafting Mitch Trubisky. It's just a case deal, and he still gives him faith. So we will see. It is going to be interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, and I think a comparison we can make is some of the quarterback deals or trade packages that have already happened. So Matt Stafford went for 2 firsts, and then Jared Goff was he was a reason I believe there was another first just because of his salary and his level of play. So I think what Stafford went for is probably a little less than 2 firsts in value. Deshaun Watson went for, or is supposed to go for, 3 firsts, mid-round picks, like probably seconds and thirds, as well as players. So that is a lot. I don't think Russell Wilson is as much in a trade, or you'd have to trade as much as Deshaun just due to age. Sean's 25 million, 25 years old. Russell's 32. So there's the age factor. And then, yeah, that is just – it's interesting. I would imagine probably 3 firsts and then probably a middle round pick and then probably a player or 2. What player leaves to be seen? Would the Bears trade Khalil Mack or Akeem Hicks or Fuller? Probably not. I mean, you dismantle a lot of your defense. Or like Eddie Jackson, that would also be tough to get rid of too. So that's the only issue I see for the Bears is if they do start trading a bunch of players, they're just going to be tearing down their roster, and they still need more talent. This team, as good as their defense has been, it's not like they're getting any younger and they can't really afford to lose a lot of pieces.
I'm also concerned because of the whole Deshaun trade scenarios and the fact that even if players voice that they might go somewhere or want to be traded, it seems like, at least because of the Deshaun situation, that the management of the NFL teams have so much more power than the players, whereas like Deshaun saying he wants to be traded. Everybody knows that, and he still hasn't been traded. They're not even really looking too hard for him. So I worry the Seahawks are going to be like that, but I'm also hopeful that something can happen. And if it does, this could save Ryan Pace's career, because if anyone out here is watching as a Chicago Bears fan, Ryan Pace is next to dead to Chicago Bears fans right now of his woes and drafting players.
This could be, if he pulls this off somehow, this could save his job.
Most certainly.
If they give up too much.
I was just saying that they're on the hot seat. They're on the hot seat.
Yeah, exactly. And then how do you think this offense would turn into? Like, if, let's just say they were able to keep Allen Robinson, they'd have Mooney, they'd have Anthony Miller, the corpse of Jimmy Graham, Cole Kmet, David Montgomery, who started popping off at the end of the season. Their O-line's not the best, but Russell Wilson's never had a good O-line, and since like 2012 or 2013 when they won the ship. So he would be someone that could operate behind a lesser than average O-line. Do you think their offense would be able to beat a top 10 and like carry this team, or do you think they need more?
So I would say one thing is if Russell Wilson came to the Bears, they could have the opportunity to beat any team because of this fact. Russell Wilson has arguably the best deep ball in the NFL.
It's very good.
Watching the Bears, regardless of our quarterback, we run a lot of deep routes. Trubisky, Foles, whoever's in there, they usually don't get completed because we don't have the accurate of a deep ball quarterback. So if Russell Wilson came to the Bears and having our offense, which does have deep routes a couple times a game, could just give us the potential to have those big plays that can just one play of the entire drive to score a touchdown and actually start scoring more points to compete with these teams. So I think just the fact that he would give us so much on the deep ball would allow us to compete with any team in the league, honestly.
And he's played with a run-heavy system. If the Bears continue to do that with Montgomery, which, they did during the last – from week 10 on, he's operated in that, and he doesn't need to throw the ball 40 times. He usually doesn't, and that would be totally fine. So if they want to maybe go with that more ground and pound and then use Russell at the end of the game or when they need him on third down, that's always an option. But yeah, this is crazy. And there has been reports too that he may not leave this year, but Russell Wilson will not stay in Seattle forever. And it's kind of made me reminisce about the Tom Brady situation, because when he was on the Patriots and there was that riff in the locker rooms, or reports of it at least, it was kind of like, no way Tom Brady leaves after 20 years. And then he did. It's pretty crazy. And I mean, this offseason just been nuts in general with the amount of quarterbacks on the move or wanting to leave. I mean, we thought last year was crazy with Phillip Rivers to the Colts and Tom Brady to the Buccaneers. Now we have Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Stafford's gone, maybe Jimmy G. It's crazy right now.
Unprecedented times.
Exactly. But to move on, we have some midseason awards for NBA, and we can start with the MVP. So the first guy we wanted to nominate was LeBron James. And so here's basically the overarching question that we're going to try to answer with all these guys is, should LeBron James win the MVP? And if not, what does he have to do to get to the point where he should be one of the top two guys?
Yep. And I think with LeBron, obviously already in contention, he is the odds favorite if you're looking at Vegas odds right now. And I think one thing that is the thing to look for with this Lakers team is obviously how they're going to do without Anthony Davis. This could be a spotlight on LeBron because AD is not there to win MVP, but it's going to be very correlated to the Lakers' record and how they fare against the other contenders, how the season goes on. Because off the bat, when AD was initially injured, they had a pretty rough stretch. It still seems to be, I think they have just strung together 2 wins as of right now. So maybe a trajectory upwards right now, but I think the record is crucial for how the MVP consideration is going to be. Do you have any other factors you think are going to play into it, Blake?
Yeah, so off the bat, statistically speaking, it's a little down year for LeBron, which doesn't mean much because he's still obviously LeBron James. So as of now, he's averaging 25, 8 boards, 8 assists, and a steal a game. So his points are a little less than his usual. I think he's slowing down physically, or not physically, but like athletically. Like I feel like he's done this in the regular season a lot where he doesn't play extensive minutes, like saving his body. And I feel like that's now showing more than ever. But yeah, I'm with you on the whole AD thing. Like, if LeBron can remain a top 2 seed and AD misses extensive periods of time, I feel like it would really be hard to not give it to him for the reason that he is, quote unquote, carrying them harder without a second star. And really, as a third piece, who would you even say? Dennis Schroeder, Kyle Kuzma? They have really good role players, but they don't have a third, defined guy like some other teams do. So that, for me, would put him higher up. And then the other thing with it too is I know in the media, if there's not a guy who's clear cut, like the last few years, it's been James Harden, Giannis, Steph in 2016. If there's not a clear cut guy, this could be a legacy award, and they just hand it to LeBron and say, LeBron, you've been insane for the last 10 years. You probably could be debated as the most valuable player in the league these last 10 years. You get to this championship every year. We're just going to give it to you to make up for those times that you probably should have won it or could have arguably won it, but you didn't. So here you go. I really think that could come into play.
Definitely. I think that's a very good point too. And I think if their record remains top 3-ish in the West, then I think that's a narrative that'll probably remain true in the sense, unless someone else keeps going after. But I guess that could be a bridge into other candidates though. I think One other one that's obviously in consideration right now, Embiid. Should we talk about?
Joel Embiid, yes.
You got any thoughts on it? You got any thoughts?
Yeah. So honestly, right now, I believe if the season ended today, I think he would probably win. So this year, he's been averaging 30. He's shooting really well. His three-point percentage is over 40 now. He's not taking 10 a game, but still. 11 boards, 3 assists, a steal, and a block. So his stats have been a little better, right? But the main thing is he's been really healthy compared to previously, and I think that was always the biggest thing with him is conditioning, availability, not being injured. We've seen him in the playoffs where he's had to take a game off, and you can't do that when you get into the later rounds because every game is so crucial. If you're the best guy, like your team kind of needs you there. But here's the thing, too, is they're number one in the East, which plays a huge factor. And in some games, he has been very, very, very dominant. I know the Bulls game, he dropped 50. He was shooting over like 55, 60%. And he pretty much willed them to victory. I mean, they would just pass him the ball in the post, and it was game over. He'd either draw a foul or just bully Wendell Carter. So I really think he has a strong narrative right now, at least in the media. What are your thoughts on him so far?
I would agree with you. I think obviously the odds have LeBron as the favorite to win it.
Yeah, they do.
I think right now I would pick Embiid. I think he's been shown throughout the season that he basically can't be stopped. No one's really done anything to stop him. I like the statistical improvement too that he's shooting. What was it? Last year he was shooting 33 from three. Now he's at like 41. And last year he was shooting 47 from the field. Now he's at 51. And one thing that's really impressed me is off the bat in a lot of games, he usually doesn't go too much attack mode, and he has a very nice off the jab jumper. And
his heavy dribble, his heavy shot is very nice. Like I don't feel like he used to do that all the time, but he does it a lot more now. And he's 7'2", so
yeah. And when he's hitting that, then you're gonna have to respect the shot and step up more. And if Joel Embiid gets any sort of leverage on you as a defender, you're toast. He's either getting the bucket, getting the dunk, or he's getting fouled. And another thing too, I believe his free throw percentage too is 86%.
Yeah, that's elite for a center, especially.
So yeah, he's impressed me all around in his game so far this year. And I if I'm picking right now, I'm giving Embiid the MVP.
That's fair. And we haven't even brought up one of his best aspects, and that's him being the anchor of their defense, right? You know, he plays in the paint. It's pretty tough if there's a 280-pounder who's 7'2", and you're trying to go in, and he's also nimble on his feet with good footwork. It's going to be tough to score. I don't really see too many times where he's just getting like back down or anything like that. So he's an absolute anchor in the center. And yeah, that's huge too with their team being the first in the East. So you see over time, I think one of the only times it hasn't been a top 3 seed player who's won it was Russell Westbrook in 2017. But every other time, you're usually like the first, second, or third seed in your conference. So he fits that. Is there anything that would happen or would have to happen for him to not win it at this point, do you think, or be the favorite?
I think one thing that could affect him is as he keeps up his dominance role, they're going to probably be sending more doubles at him. Maybe he's going to have to be a better passer, or maybe turnovers could start to downgrade his MVP narrative this year. And then along with that, just every time he goes up against an elite defender matchup, because he can drop 50 on the Bulls. The Bulls have arguably the worst big men in the league. But when he goes up against the Utah Jazz with Gobert or some of these other elite center defenders, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays into it. So I would say how he handles the double and how he handles elite defenders could downgrade or upgrade his narrative. What about you, though? What other factors?
Yeah. So to your point, I know I think it was recently, he actually kind of outplayed Miles Turner like pretty badly and just absolutely killed him. So, and we know Miles Turner's been really good this year, right? So there's that. And then, yeah, for me, if he stays healthy this whole year, I think he would probably be the favorite. So if he plays over 70 games, I think I'd it'd be pretty hard to argue against him if his team is still up there. But yeah, over the years, he hasn't played over 70 games. I don't even know if he has played over 70 games more than once or twice, but that's a huge issue because if you're missing 20 games and your team's still up there, like, are you as valuable as we think you are if your team can still win without you? Just my 2 cents on that. And then a team that didn't have this star last year is Steph Curry. So the Warriors were without Steph Curry. I believe it was his hand, right? Or wrist or something?
Yeah. Some sort of hand wrist.
So he missed an extended period of time. They ended up with the second pick. He's back. They got Wiseman. Now Clay's out, but they have Kelly Oubre, Wiggins, Juan Toscano-Anderson, Wiseman, and Steph Curry's playing really well. Do you think he should be in the conversation or at least up there with the others?
I do think he should be in the conversation. I think it's super impressive how he's willing these Warriors to these big wins, and I also think his field goal percentages too at like just 2-point percentage 56, 3 percentage 40% still. Each team that plays the Warriors knows he's the best player, and they have to stop him, and most people can't. So I think he definitely deserves it because of his scoring. I just don't know if I would put him over an Embiid, over a Bron because of the defensive side of the ball. Well, what are your thoughts on Steph in the conversation?
Yeah, so there's been a few games this year that I've been lucky enough to see, and he's just gone ballistic. There's those games where, like, every time he gets the ball deep, you're just worried if you're the other team that he's going to pull it from like 30 feet out, and he does, and then he starts hitting one after another, and it's just like, dude, you got to be kidding me. Like, he's just running off screens, off ball, and dominating that way. And I was actually happy to see this happen. I think we've talked about it, but we thought he was going to do really good this year, coming back and being able to take maybe more shots than he has in the past. And he has been really dominant. The seed is probably the biggest issue for his case right now. So they're I believe they're the 8th seed. I think they're the 8th seed right now, 8th or 9th, or in that range. So
no, they're 8th. They're 8th.
They are 8th. Okay, so right now their seed is fringe playoffs. That really hurts his case. I think that hurts his case more than anything else. But yeah, he has been phenomenal. Do you think his defense will be enough to say he's not MVP, considering some of the guys up there, like Embiid particularly? His defense is a big positive for them.
I think the defense definitely is an aspect, but I think it's more to your point about the seeding, where you said Russell Westbrook was one of the few exceptions to winning the NBA on a lower seed team, but he was averaging a triple-double. And as much as Steph can light it up on the offensive side, I think he's averaging around 6 assists, not really in the triple-double range. And I just think because of how many other greats we have in this organization, that I don't think he's going to amount to the MVP. And I think not even more so his defense, but it's more so the seeding is what I would say.
Interesting. Do you think that if, let's say, over the next half of the season, he starts averaging like 32, 33, and their team catapults up to the 4th seed, and it's mainly because of him, let's say 4th or 3rd seed, do you think he would be the favorite or be in a lot better position to where you could argue him more? Or do you think it's too little too late and, too much of the season's gone by?
I think that's totally a viable option. No, I think if he was leading in scoring and he catapulted the Warriors up to beating contender teams and getting to a high seed in the East, I think he's right there in the actual conversation. Whereas now he's in the conversation, but I just don't think he's going to get it done. But if that happens, if he was leading the league in scoring and the Warriors were even top 5 in the West, I think he would be a way more solidified in the conversation.
Yeah. And I did want to say, too, his stats – I know stats are not everything, but they are somewhat indicative of stuff. But his 2016 and his stats now are pretty similar when you consider how great his 2016 season was. Now, they're not having the same success, obviously. But I think that is kind of something crazy that Steph Curry can be playing somewhat – not as good, but similarly to his 2016 season and just not even be in the top 3 or not even at the top, really. But –
I would say, too, that off that point, that is just a statement to how good the league is right now.
Yeah.
I truly believe that there's never been a more talented NBA league than right now. And I think you could just, off the MVP consideration alone, I think all these guys have a very valid case, which is why we're discussing. But it is just truly a great time to be an NBA fan.
And we're not even going to talk about, Giannis or Luka. And they're two guys who preseason, you'd have up there with the greats. And then one last guy who this man's been playing insanely well this year, Nikola Jokic, the Joker. Do you think he has a case for MVP or no?
I think he has a case. I think he is a bit more similar to Steph in the sense that because we already have Embiid in the conversation, I think Jokic's biggest competitor in this case is going to be Embiid because they're in the same position. And when I look at them, obviously Jokic, better ball handler, better passer, better vision, yada, yada, yada. But I think Embiid is, as you said, more of an anchor on defense and has been doing a little bit more. And I honestly think he's probably been shooting the ball better than Jokic. So I think, again, just like Steph, Jokic has you can make a case for him as MVP. But I think another thing, too, as we brought up a couple of times before, the seeding is having an impact, too. But what are your thoughts on Jokic in the conversation?
So I think if there was no seeding implication, I think Nikola Jokic would be my MVP of the year. So this offseason, they lost a couple of guys, Torrey Craig. They lost Jeremy Grant, who we might talk about later. But we saw what he did last year in the playoffs, down 3-1 twice, came back, and he hasn't really stopped from that level of play. He might have only gotten better. So we've talked about he takes the ball up, which is pretty nuts for a center. His passing's among the best of the league. He's had multiple triple doubles, which, I mean, we think that's crazy for a point guard, but imagine for a center, someone who typically doesn't ball handle or is as good of a passer as he is. The only thing is really that their team isn't as great, but for how good they have been, or for how good he has been, he has willed this team to the position they are in right now. If he was not on the Nuggets, I really don't think they would be even close to the playoffs. They'd probably be a bottom 3 seed in the West. The other two great players on their team are probably MPJ, you could maybe say, and then obviously Jamal Murray. But if you take Jokic off that team, they would tumble tremendously.
Definitely.
And yeah, he means so much because they run the offense through him. Now he does definitely lack a little bit on defense, but I think his offense obviously more than makes up for it. I think his offense is probably still better than Embiid's, just how versatile he is, and he's shooting just as good as Embiid. So yeah, he's been incredible.
One thing I would say too on the Jokic topic is compared to last year, I don't know if you noticed this too, but I think he's a little bit in better shape.
He is.
He's had some highlight reel dunks over people.
He dunked on Patrick Williams last night.
I know. I'm the man, Pat. I'm P'd up, and that
the paw
feat, as we know, that is a pretty big feat. But yeah, he looks in better shape, and I think the better shape he gets into, just the scarier of a player he gets to. Because I mean, the guy has size who could handle the ball. If he gets quicker, good luck stopping him. Good luck.
And I feel with him too is I've never seen someone get fouled so much, and there's just like no call. Like you can see him every time. He's just getting mauled out there. It's kind of ridiculous when you think of like the Trae Youngs and the Lukas and other guys like that who like try to bait fouls. Jokic just gets, he gets mauled and they don't call anything. It's kind of ridiculous.
And I would say one thing to just why a lot of people probably love Jokic, as I do, and I think you do too, is he doesn't usually flop. He's not complaining. He'll get mauled. Maybe he'll make a face, but he's not going to flop. He takes it. He takes it.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of other people, whereas like as big as Embiid is, Embiid will get a little chattery if he's getting hit. He'll let the refs know if he thinks he's getting hit. So I think that is
embellish the hit.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I give Jokic the upper hand with against maybe Embiid or some of these other guys is he'll if you want to go after him, he'll take it and he'll score buckets right here.
And then the other thing with Jokic too, that kind of the last thing with him is he's had just insane moments, and I think that really boosts him up as a player. And the clutchest of times, his team down 3-1 against the Clippers, and the Jazz against Rudy Gobert, he has balled out. And I think, obviously it's just this regular season, but it kind of puts him on a little more of a pedestal in the sense that we've seen him in the clutchest of clutchest moments, and we've seen how good he is. Embiid hasn't had those career-defining moments yet. He very well could this season. I know that 50-point game against the Bulls was definitely huge for him, and this season when you look at it in a snapshot, but Jokic just had just some memorable moments, man.
The truth.
All right, and now we're going to transition to the next award, and that is who has been the most improved NBA player this year. Me and Nolan have 3 guys which we think definitely deserve some recognition. And we can start with mine, and I have Detroit Piston Jeremy Grant.
Okay.
So he came over from the Nuggets. He got a pretty big contract, and I don't know anyone who has not said they thought this was an overpay at first or like, why would you give that out? But he's exceeded. He's underpaid now for what he's been able to do. So I can just give you from his Nuggets to the Pistons. So last year he was averaging 12 points, 3 boards, 1 assist. He's now averaging 23 points, so that's nearly doubled. 5 boards, 3 assists, a steal, and a block. And he's looked really good. Like, he's carried this team that they just don't really have any talent, to be quite frank.
True.
They have Josh Jackson. They have Dennis Smith Jr. They have Lord Killian Hayes, Sadiq Bey. But they don't really have another guy to help him out too much. So a lot of the time it's the Jeremy Grant show. What do you think about Jeremy Grant?
I agree with a lot of your points. I think I was very curious how he would do in the Pistons. Definitely a better role than the Nuggets. But even watching him in the Nuggets last year, you saw these flashes on the offensive side of the ball, especially where this guy could take it to the hoop or shoot. So I think he's proven himself as an offensive player in the Pistons. But I don't think it should be understated how much of a difference he makes in the defensive end too. Which I think that was kind of how he got his name on the Nuggets in recognition. But on the Pistons, he's continued to do so too. He usually guards arguably the best player on the other team. Very good defender. And I just love how athletic he is, honestly, in terms of how, like, lateral quickness and then the offensive end going up and getting it or dunking over players. I think this guy has been balling out in the Pistons, although just a little bit unfortunate being on that team with not really any help. He doesn't have too much help, but he's done, I think, as good as he could have done with the situation he's been given, and I think he's definitely played up to the standard with that contract that he signed. But yeah.
I think the other thing too, just for his sake, is when he was on the Nuggets last year and when he was on the Thunder previously, he was more seen as just an athletic wing who can occasionally hit the 3 and play solid defense. That's all he was viewed as. Now he's looked at as a pretty decent scorer. Now I'm not going to sit here and say, he's like Zach LaVine or James Harden, because he is, taking a lot of shots on not the best of teams. But it's still crazy, just the year-over-year transformation that he has had and kind of switching his own narrative about who he is as a player. So shout out to Jeremy Grant for that.
Definitely. And I think, as you just stated another person's name, so it could be a good bridge. I think the next guy we're going to talk about is the man of the Bulls, Zach LaVine.
Okay.
Too. So I'll start off with LaVine. I think he's definitely in this conversation for sure. And one thing I look at is his field goal percentage and the fact that he was a proven scorer last year. I think everyone can understand that. But he's gotten better. And I didn't really think he could get much better. He was already so good last year. But he was shooting last year 45% from the field, this year 52%. And he's had games, too, where he just doesn't miss. And he takes some shots, too. And then I think last year, 38% from 3. This year, 43%. Like, he has just impressed me to the point where I think now – and the other thing, too, is after last year, I mean, teams know he's the best player on the Bulls. You got a game plan for him, and no one can really game plan for him. He's taken off, and now he's an all-star, and I think he definitely deserves to be in this conversation, and he is just impressed me in every facet of his game. What are your thoughts, though, on Zach LaVine in this conversation, Blake?
Yeah, so a couple things is over his career, right, we sent over Jimmy Butler to the T-Wolves. They gave us Chris Dunn, Laurie, and LaVine. And the two guys who we really liked from that are Dunn and Markkanen. I think those two were the highest or the most valued players. But LaVine has been the best of those two by far, far away. He came in as only really a dunker, wasn't the best on defense. Then he got a better three-point shot. Then his handles got better. Then he just became an all-around better scorer. And this year, what I really liked about him is he's not really that much of a liability on defense. I'd say he's pretty average, if not, maybe a little plus, but like he's not insane, but he's at worst an average defender to where he's not getting burnt to a crisp. And I think one of the things with just him overall doing better is not having Jim Boylan. I think Billy Donovan's brought a huge culture change to this team. They look a lot better. He has all these guys playing a lot better than most people anticipated. One guy, Thaddeus Young, no one thought he'd be doing what he's doing. And it's not like he's, going to be an all-star or anything, but he's played a lot better. And I think he's part of the reason for Zach LaVine playing better. And then one other quick note with LaVine for me is there's been games where he shot like 15 threes and he's made like 8 or 9 of them. Like that is just insane. If you told me he would do that from the field goal or just from the field, that'd be great. But he's doing it behind the three-point line. And it's not like a lot of those are just catch and shoot. Like he's creating that off the dribble for himself. He split double teams really well. His passing's gotten better. He's been awesome to watch this year.
Awesome. Yeah, no, all around, he's been a stud. First-time All-Star, very deservingly so, and definitely in this category too. However, I think there is one more player that we were going to in this conversation who may even be the favorite in this conversation, and that is the man over in New York, Julius Randle. And I always kind of loved Julius Randle's game because he was kind of just a scrapper who would just bull rush anyone and take it to the rim, play hard. But one thing this season is his shot has just gotten ages better. And one thing I think is sneaks on that is he's never really been a good three-point shooter. And last season, I think he was shooting 27%. This season, he's up to 41%, which is better than a lot of just three-point specialists maybe even. Is right on that level, which has impressed me so much. And I think he really has just improved so much. But what are your thoughts on Randall's game and Randall's fitting into this conversation?
Yeah, so I guess we talk about like his play style. So goes downhill a lot, kind of goes in almost like a wrecking ball and just it's almost like he's out of control, but he's somehow in control. He loves the spin move, and he's not the biggest guy either. He's kind of like a weird he's like what 6'7", 6'8", but he plays like a power forward, so he's a little undersized in that regard.
Yeah, he's 6'8".
Yeah, but dude, he's been insane to watch this year. And for the Knicks specifically, like he's the main reason they are in the playoff picture right now. I mean, over the last few years, they've really not been good. He was never as good as he is right now. He's gotten increasingly better over the years. Sky's the limit for him, to be honest with you. I think, what is he averaging? Like 20, 23 a game. He has the Knicks in playoff contention. And then a couple of more things on him is I think Thibodeau does seem to get the best out of his players. I think we saw that with the Bulls. Whether that was with Luol Deng, Joakim Noah, like he gets the best out of his guys. And then one man, he's free now. He was in jail since 2014. This is a bit of an X factor here, but Bobby Shmurda has been released from jail, so he's a New York rapper. He's in jail for 6 or I believe 7 years, somewhere in that, but he's free now. He's in New York. I think that might have a little bit of, it's been putting some joy into the Knicks locker room. What are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree. I think there is a culture change in New York City right now. I think it started with the Knicks playing good off the start of the bat, and now Bobby Shmurda's free. Well, I don't know what else is going to happen. I'm excited to see what happens, but there's a culture change there. We got Tom Thibodeau and D Rose is back.
Yeah, he's there. He's back. He can't escape Tom Thibodeau. He can't. He really can't.
Literally. I love that X factor. I think it, as funny as it may sound to some, I think it does play play a pretty big role in this.
The spirits are up for the Knicks locker room and the rap game in New York. And now we're going to transition onto the next award, and it's Defensive Player of the Year. So Nolan's got a really interesting one for this. I didn't see it coming. Do you want to share who your midseason Defensive Player of the Year has been so far?
I will. Before I jump into my player, because I don't want to just everyone off the bat.
Yeah, no, explain yourself, sure.
Brief explanation. So for all those statistical, analytical people watching, there's a statistic called the Raptor statistic. What the Raptor is a brief explanation, it's a plus-minus statistic that measures the number of points a player contributes to his team, offense and defense, per 100 possessions. So an example is if a player has a Raptor rating of plus 2.1 on offense, he boosts his team performance by 2.1 points over 100 possessions. Vice versa, if he has a defensive Raptor of plus 3.4, he improves his team defensive performance by 3.4 points over 100 possessions. That's a brief explanation. So I was doing some statistical looking at defensive Raptor or just Raptor in general. And I looked at this anomaly to me because this player so few even know of. At the top of the Raptor statistic for defensive.
Who was there, Nolan?
It was 7.9 rating.
Wow, that's pretty high.
Jakob Poeltl.
Okay.
Some may not even know who this guy is. Not a big name.
Spurs, and he's the center for those.
The 7-footer center on the Spurs, used to play for the Raptors, but I gotta say, I haven't had too much of a sample size, but after I seen the statistic, I watched the Spurs last night, and this guy might have one of the best IQs out of a 7-footer on defense that I've seen. One thing I'll say is if you watch his highlights, he's a player where he gets a lot of blocks where he holds onto the ball and passes out, not just a block and then they stay with the ball.
Knocks it out of bounds or something. Like they retain possession, which is, it's not flashy. It's not going to, people aren't going to rave about it, but it's the right basketball play.
Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, too. This is strictly defense. Because I say one thing why people don't really know too much about Jakob Poeltl. On the offensive end, he really is just a floater or a dunk every now and then. And also, he needs to fix his free throws. He's shooting 30% from the free throw line.
That's brutal.
That's abysmal. It is terrible. However, there are obviously big-name defenders, but I'm putting this guy's name in the conversation because he deserves to be so. He has one of the highest IQs of any defensive player, makes a lot of highlights, and is very underknown, or not many people know him. So I wanted to start off with throwing his name in the ring. Jakob Poeltl, remember the name, go watch some Spurs basketball. But you might be surprised to hear that, Blake. What are your thoughts on this guy, Jakob Poeltl? What do you know about him?
So, like you said, high IQ. I haven't seen him play very much, but he definitely the only thing, or I think the biggest argument you would have for Poeltl would be that he lifts up the Spurs defense so much more than other players lift up their defense. And that's kind of what the Raptor rating or analytical point is trying to show. And I think that's a really big or strong argument when you look at Marc Gasol winning the award when he did with the Grizzlies. Is you could definitely say LeBron was the better athlete. He had insane stats. He was a beast on Miami. I think it was 2013 or 2012 when Marc Gasol won it. But he mainly won that because their team defense was so good. If the Spurs can play good defense and keep playing better and maybe say play top 3 defense, that would boost his argument and make it a lot stronger if he is the heaviest contributor on the best defensive team. Now, they have a little ways to go to get there, but there is an argument to be made for that.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I think it's a crazy anomaly that not many people know who this guy is, and he's really making a difference for the Spurs. However, outside of Poeltl, do you have any other nominations in this category, Blake?
Yeah, I'm going to go with a pretty obvious one here, and that's Ben Simmons. So we know he can guard pretty much any position exceptionally well, 1 to 5, and you can't find that with many players. You could maybe say Giannis, or I think Anthony Davis is the other guy that comes to my mind. I feel like voter fatigue, Giannis isn't really going to get any awards. Anthony Davis has been out, and maybe Ben Simmons can't lock down a 5, but if he gets switched onto one, it's not where he's, Muggsy Bogues and the dude just can floater it over him really easily or hook shot. So he's competitive in that respect. And second off, and this isn't really necessarily defense, but it's defense to offense. This dude's a beast in transition. And I think it's I think it's should count more towards his defense. The fact that if he does get a steal, if he does get a block, if he gets a long rebound, he can turn it up and really help their offense in a way that not many other players can do. What are your thoughts on Ben Simmons maybe winning the Defense Player of the Year award?
I think totally a fair nomination. I think he's right in the conversation, especially with AD out, and I think Giannis motor fatigue or whatnot. The one thing I wish is, as talented as Ben Simmons is, sometimes when I watch Sixers, it doesn't look like he's exerting full effort. So he's such a good player, especially on defense. And he doesn't really need to exert full effort. But one guy in terms of effort that I just personally love is Lou Dort. If people know who that is.
Yeah, no, he's awesome.
I look at Lou Dort's energy. If Ben Simmons played like that, with just like a little bit more kind of swagger, a little bit more energy, I think he would be hands down the best defender in the league. So as good as he is, and I think he very well could win Defensive Player of the Year. I wish I maybe at some time saw a little bit more energy, but that's basically my only downside to him as a defensive player.
And maybe it's because he does have to, be the point guard, be the ball handler, and he doesn't want to lose all of his energy on the defensive end when he knows he has to play make for others and himself. But yeah, he's really, really good on defense. I think athletically, I know everyone always compared him to LeBron, when he was coming into the league, and that's probably not the most fair comparison to him just because of the expectations there. But athletically speaking, I mean, you're not going to find many combinations of strength, speed, and just like agility, quickness as you will with Ben Simmons.
Definitely. And I think, that he usually is guarding guards or forwards, though. However, a guy who's a little bit bigger that we could talk about as the last guy in this conversation is the Frenchman, Rudy Gobert.
Frenchie, yeah.
Your thoughts on the Frenchman?
Yeah, so he's an insanely good defender in the post. He gets tons of blocks. He's 7 feet, and he doesn't move very easily. I am a little hesitant to give him the award, though. And I think he has one major flaw that these other guys really – I mean, I guess Podol would kind of have it too, but we've seen him kind of get abused in the playoffs by James Harden with pick and rolls. And when he is playing drop coverage and he can't step up just due to not being quick enough, I think that's a really big hindrance on his game where he can almost get played off the court because he can't guard Harden. But other guys like Simmons or even Giannis, that does not happen to them. And I really think that's tough for Rudy because how good he actually is in the post and getting blocks. And, he's the anchor of one of the best defenses on the number one team in the West. That is huge, but that is one flaw that I see with him that kind of makes me really hesitant to say he should win it because he is deserving. He really is.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that take, and I think comparing him to someone like Simmons, when you think about that, is obviously Gobert is an elite paint protector, but can you give Defensive Player of the Year to someone who can't guard guards or like the whole positions? Whereas Giannis won last year, correct? And Giannis, maybe he could still get a little bit off his footing when he goes on like some flashy guards like Steph or Dame, but nowhere near to Gobert's extent. So I think that's a very good point in the sense that as much of a paint protector as Gobert is, I think he's going to have to get better at his switching off pick and rolls and guarding guards and just contesting them a little bit better because I think you're right on in the point where if a flashy guard switches on to Gobert has a high likelihood of just getting his ankles broken or looking pretty silly on those plays. Great point.
I mean, and it's a lot to ask of a 7-footer who's already elite in the post, right? Like, we're telling him, you're already one of the best at doing this, but you now have to go out and guard the James Hardens and those guys. So it's a little unfair in that sense. And then one other guy, too, like, we've seen Draymond Green in the past do that, like, decently well, where he won't get completely destroyed. That's why I've always thought he's been one of the most deserving. This year is different. But, yeah, and I mean, just like seeing the Rockets and Jazz play over the years or in the past, when James Harden would do that, he would really make it tough on Rudy Gobert just how good he is in the pick and roll game.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think all those guys deservedly so in it.
Yeah.
So it's for all you watching, I'm going to be watching myself. Jakob Poeltl. Remember the name. I'm gonna be watching.
I'll make sure to check in with the Spurs a little more and watch him clamp up some big men then.
Let's see how he does. We'll see.
Awesome. And that's going to wrap this episode. We're going to cut these clips up, release them into their own clips, so you can watch them there. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back next time.